Good morning. It's Bernard Nomberg with another episode of NOMBERG LAW Live, and I'm so very pleased to have my longtime friend Richard Friedman here with me. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Bernard. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time with me. I've known Richard for 20 plus years now in many capacities, but we're here at the Birmingham Jewish Federation and Foundation offices, where Richard has been the executive director of the Federation. How many years now?
It's 36 and a half years.
36 and a half years. And I wanted to sit down before, and it's rare to catch Richard with a few free minutes. I wanted to sit down with you for a couple of minutes and just have a chat, and I appreciate you having some time.
I appreciate you coming over.
Absolutely. Well, Richard, for those three people who may be watching this who don't know you, give them a short little bio of who you are.
Sure. Well, I've been executive director of the Federation, as you heard, for a very long time. The Federation is a wonderful institution. We're involved in fundraising for Jewish needs locally and globally. We're involved in community relations, in particular educating the broader community regarding issues that are important to our Jewish community. We're involved in leadership development. We're involved in planning. And I've really had a privilege of holding this position for a number of years. Prior to that, I worked for the Birmingham News. For about 5 years, I was a reporter and editor. I also taught journalism part-time at Birmingham Southern. So though I'm not from here, I've been here a very long time. My wife is from here, but I've had a great experience in Birmingham, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that have been afforded me.
Well, Sally being the executive director, your wife Sally, executive director of the Jewish Foundation, Birmingham Jewish Foundation, and you of the Birmingham Jewish Federation, the two of y'all, from my perspective, have just done a remarkable and beautiful job over the years, and we're so glad to have you both in your respective positions. So I know it's a rarity from me to you, but it's a compliment. So thank you for what you've done.
Well, I'll take it, and I thank you, and you have been a very important part of our success, as was Karen, and we are very grateful to all the support and friendship you've provided us over the years.
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate those kind words. I want to take a few minutes, and we've got so many topics, but we have a limited amount of time.
Sure.
But I want to talk about, you've been here in Birmingham 40 plus years, and I know from your perspective, you've seen that the Jewish population, the Jewish identity, all things Jewish in Birmingham have evolved and changed, good and bad.
Sure.
And this is kind of a broad question, but you're the one person who I know who could kind of synopsize that. So give us just your perspective of what you've seen over the last 35 to 40 years.
Well, I've seen an incredible community evolve really over the course of a multi-generational timeline. Mm-hmm. I've had the pleasure, the unique privilege of staying in this job, and I say what I'm about to say, I'm not saying in a way of bragging or self-promotion, but just to create some context. On July 1st, I will become the longest-serving Jewish Federation director in America.
Wow. And
what's important to me about that is not about me per se, but what it reflects is that I've had the unique privilege of working with many families, not just from generation to generation, as we say within our tradition, but really from generation to generation to generation. Mm-hmm. There are members of our board of directors who I remember being born. I remember working very closely with their grandparents on very important causes. So, in terms of maybe the people and the players and the particulars of the community, I have seen it change and evolve over the years. But at the same time, there have been some very important connecting threads, overarching threads, and those are these. We continue to be a small Jewish community here in the Deep South. We have a great Jewish community. We're recognized proportionately or per capita as one of the best Jewish communities in America. We maintain strong institutions. We're generous philanthropically. We take pride in our Judaism. But we also feel an equal obligation to the well-being of the broader Birmingham community. Jews, from the day I began until this very day, have played a very important role in the welfare of the broader Birmingham community. I think we're a community with a great future because we have been successful in attracting a significant number of young people to volunteer and both work for our community. And as I finish up, I could not be more optimistic about the future. I think there's a new Jewish energy bursting here in Birmingham. It's driven by some very, very creative and accomplished young people. And I'm excited. So what I tell people is when I came into this work in the early 1980s, it was a great community full of opportunity and full of energy. And now that I'm finishing up, and I say to everything there is a season, but the season is beautiful. It's springtime here in the Birmingham Jewish community in terms of the young people and the energy and the ideas that are flowing. So things change, but the overarching themes, the more embracing pieces, the glue has remained constant.
Well, I haven't been in Birmingham as long as you have, but I've certainly either in my own way participated in various Jewish organizations or observed from a distance. And I too have seen an evolution. I've seen things that really warm my heart for where we're going. You're not going to have, the old saying, if you have 10 Jewish people in a room, how many opinions do you have? Probably like 20 or 30.
Sure.
But at least I see, at least on the surface level, you see lots of different organizations working together for many common greater community goods.
Sure.
And I really have always appreciated that about our community. And a lot of that is fueled by Sally's efforts and your efforts here at the foundation and the Federation. But I want to talk about 2019 and going forward.
Sure.
What type of programs are out there for people to get involved in? And I don't mean necessarily just with their temples or their shuls, but I mean from a programming standpoint, from a fundraising, from an education standpoint.
Sure.
What's out there that's vibrant that you guys are seeing that having success?
Well, one of the major things on our agenda is a continued integration of the Birmingham Jewish Federation and the Levitt Jewish Community Center, where we've taken the programming staffs from both institutions and as a strategy have consolidated them into one to lift the programming agenda of the Jewish community. And as a result, there are an abundance of offerings that the Federation is doing in partnership with the JCC, running the gamut, of course, from programs for young families, programs here at the JCC to provide activities and social opportunities and learning opportunities for every sector of the community. We continue to engage in a systematic approach to advocating and educating for Israel, which is an issue that's very important to us. I could go on and on and on and on, but I believe there's a place for everyone in the Jewish community to the extent that you want to get involved. There's no shortage of programs and offerings within our Jewish community. When you look at the offerings, for example, of the Federation, the JCC, the temples, Jewish Family Services, we have a very rich tapestry of opportunities for people who want to interact with the Jewish community in a way that not only will enrich the community, but it will enrich their lives.
Well, it's just being here on this campus, which houses so many different organizations. You've got the day school on one end, the JCC in the middle, the preschool or the early childhood program, plus the Federation Foundation. This whole campus, I'm here almost every single day with our office being next door. And it really, it warms my heart to see how many people are here every day, how many different programs. All you have to do is go to the websites of the different organizations, and we'll put that in the comment section for the JCC and other organizations. You can just see how many things are offered. It doesn't matter your religion. It doesn't matter your political beliefs. It just, the commonality being is you want to get involved.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm particularly proud of, I said a few minutes ago, that not only has our Jewish community had a dynamic and sustaining commitment to the well-being, enhancement, and enrichment of our own community, but we have an equally significant commitment to the broader community. And one of the ways that that manifests itself is the fact that this Jewish Community Center is open to anyone who would like to join, regardless of faith, ethnicity, background, zip code, politics, whatever. And the way that plays itself out is really quite moving, because as I walk up and down these halls, yes, the content of the programs are bursting and energizing, but what I think we have here on our campus is a remarkable example of diversity. In my mind, I would argue that here at the LJCC, we do as fine a job as any institution in Birmingham of bringing together people from different sectors of the community, both the Jewish community and the broader community. And there's a certain kind of magic that takes place because when you swim together, you work out together, you send your kids to preschool together, you participate in elderly activities together, you learn from one another, and you get to know each other better. I can't tell you how many people over the years have stopped me to tell me, people who aren't Jewish, that they've made very, very dear Jewish friends growing up at the JCC with whom they're still very friendly today. And that's a great thing. That's a great thing we do for Birmingham, and that's a great thing we do for our Jewish community.
I suspect if you did an audit and looked at all the zip codes in the metro area, between the people who work in these buildings and facilities and the people who are members, you'd probably cover just about every zip code in the metro.
No question.
Easily.
No question.
Richard, I want to take us outside of Birmingham, outside of Alabama, and with social media being in our face 24/7, if you let it, of course there's been unfortunately, a never-ending, constant stories of anti-Semitism over the last hundreds of years.
Sure.
But here's my question to you. With the tragedy that happened in Pittsburgh, and I could go on with other cities, unfortunately, do you see a rise, not only in the United States, but worldwide, in anti-Semitism? Or is it just that we see it more because of social media being so prevalent?
That's a great question. I think it's a combination of both. I think that anti-Semitism has increased locally and globally, but I also think that increase is magnified as a result of social media. And what happens is it becomes a vicious cycle, because then social media becomes a trigger or a catalyst for more anti-Semitism. It's very, very frustrating. It's unnerving. Social media, as we all know, polarizes society. It radicalizes those who are prone to have negative feelings toward groups other than their own. Look at the horrible thing that happened on Easter in Sri Lanka. And yes, I do have a concern. I have an additional concern that, as a corollary to anti-Semitism, is anti-Zionism. Now, Zionism is the belief that Jews have a right to have a safe and sovereign country in their biblical homeland, i.e. Israel. And the anti-Zionism often, at its core, is really anti-Semitism. It's not to say that if you criticize an Israeli policy, you're anti-Semitic. I'm not suggesting that at all. Israelis criticize Israeli policies, but you can detect when you drill down whether someone has an implacable hostility to the Jewish state, a rejection of the right of Jews to enjoy rights similar to most other ethnic and religious groups in other parts of the world. That falls into the arena of anti-Semitism. So you see a lot of pressures coming together. I am far more concerned about anti-Semitism today than I have been at any point in my career.
And in part, I know you just answered why, but are there things that you have seen that you'd care to discuss that really give you that concern?
Yeah, sure. Look, there are the obvious things like something horrific happening in Pittsburgh, but what you can see is you see a lot of anti-Semitism masking as anti-Zionism on college campuses, for example. Israeli speakers being shouted down, pro-Israel students being intimidated, their freedom of speech being robbed from them in the name of freedom of speech. misrepresentation of Israel and its policies. Those things are of deep concern to me because if you study the history of anti-Semitism, you can begin to draw parallels in, for example, Germany in the 1930s, when there was a systematic process of defamation of the Jewish people, and you can compare it to the systematic defamation going on right now of the Jewish state. And we don't have time or space here, but I can give you examples and trace parallels. For example, one quick one, Jewish merchants, Jewish businesses, Jews in general, were boycotted, were encouraged by the ascending Nazi regime. The German people were encouraged by the ascending Nazi regime to boycott the Jews in the 1930s. Those who have a hostility against the Jewish state encourage people to boycott the Jewish state. And we can see the parallels, and it's of concern to us, no question.
Well, along those lines, I know you've been to Israel numerous times. I've been a few times myself. And when I'm there, I do not feel any sense of urgency, any sense of emergency at all. I do not fear for anything.
Sure.
I'd like for you, and I've had this discussion numerous times with friends locally, Jewish and non-Jewish, all over the place, who have never been.
Yeah.
What do you say? How do you respond to people say, well, Richard, why do you go there? Why? It seems very dangerous.
You know, it's like anything. It's hard to imagine the experience unless you've had it. It's not uncommon for people who've never been to Israel and see an Israel portrayed in the news media as a place of constant turmoil and violence to be nervous, to be unsettled. But the experience typically is once you're in Israel, those concerns tend to vanish within 24 to 36 hours, and you come to see the real Israel. Yes, there are pressure points. Yes, there are conflict zones. Yes, there are border skirmishes, but you stay away from that. The reality is that day-to-day life in Israel is very peaceful. It's very serene. It's people going about their businesses, but it's a hard thing to really process until you go there. I'll give you one quick story about how the media can create a false reality. We know that in theory. This was in the late 1970s. I was in Israel. I was a reporter for the Birmingham News at the time, and I had been covering a very, very difficult story here in Birmingham. There was a shooting of a young black woman at a convenience store in North Birmingham by a white police officer. This was before social media, but it became very heated, very difficult, very, very traumatic for the community. Well, I was covering it, but we had planned a trip to Israel, so I had to go away, and I didn't like to leave the story, but I was committed to go to Israel. So I'm in Israel, and I open up, remember newspapers, I open one up, it's the Jerusalem Post. And on the front page of the Jerusalem Post is a picture of the Ku Klux Klan marching down 20th Street in Birmingham. And it was about 20 Klansmen, and it said Ku Klux Klan rallying in Birmingham over protests regarding a racial shooting and whatnot. And I thought, you read that and you think Birmingham's a continued cauldron of racist turmoil dominated by the Ku Klux Klan. So I was able to look through the other end of the telescope and really gain a perspective on how the media, and I came out of the media, but it tends to exaggerate, it tends to simplify. And conversely, that unfortunately is the picture too many people have of Israel. But I tell people, go. I would think nothing about putting my wife, my daughter, my son on a plane tomorrow to go spend a couple of weeks in Israel. They'd have a wonderful experience.
I'm looking forward to my next trip as well. Richard, I can't thank you enough for your time today. I could spend all day talking with you, as you and I have had many discussions over the years. Thank you for your time today, your wisdom, your insight. Guys, if you want to communicate with Richard, we'll put the contact information for the Federation and Foundation in the comments section. Thank you for your time again. And Richard, I appreciate your friendship and sharing some time with us
Thank you for having me.
Guys, this has been another episode of NOMBERG Law Live. We come to you each Tuesday at 10 a.m. thank you for watching this episode, and we hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you another time.